YouTube, hey, Casey Dimon here, TaxSaleAcademy.com. Thank you so much for joining me as I record an episode for the Tax Sale Podcast. If you enjoy listening to podcasts, be sure to check us out on your favorite podcasting platform, and you can do that by going to TaxSalePodcast.com. There's a link down below in the description. Let's go ahead and switch on over to the audio portion of this podcast. Welcome to the Tax Sale Podcast, where tax sale investing is made easy. I'm Casey Dimon. I'm a tax sale veteran, expert, and trainer, the author of the Tax Sale Playbook, the founder of the Tax Sale Academy, and your host right here on the Tax Sale Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. And as always, at the conclusion of this podcast, if you're looking to learn more about investing in tax-defaulted real estate, head on over to TaxSaleAcademy.com. Again, that's TaxSaleAcademy.com. So, every single new investor wants to know, how do I buy tax sale properties? How do I get a list? How does it work? How cheap are they? What type of properties are available? All those types of questions. It's almost like they forget about the fact that in order to make money, you actually have to end up selling that property. Of course, there are some investors who are going to rent the property, or maybe they'll use them personally, but most of the investors that I deal with, they want to buy tax sale properties so they can turn right around and sell these properties. So I wanted to remind you guys that selling is, well, a pretty important topic, right? So in today's podcast episode, I want to discuss selling for just a little bit. And the deal is that I can make another video and another video on this topic over and over and still not cover everything that's involved when it comes to selling your tax sale properties. That's the reason I have the Academy, of course. But instead of going through the entire topic of selling real estate and everything that's involved, I wanted to choose one specific method of selling properties, which I kind of refer to as the new age method of marketing and selling real estate. It's kind of funny. When I look back, when I first got into real estate, magazines were like all the rage, right? I'd have magazine rep after magazine rep come into my office, and they would all pitch me on the idea of advertising in their magazines. They would talk distribution numbers in the thousands, and they would tell me how my property would be in the magazine that is in the stand in every single restaurant in the city. The prices were absolutely ridiculous. They were usually required long-term contracts, and the results weren't very impressive either. But I look back at those times and I kind of laugh now because marketing has come so far. Sadly, of course, many of those magazines have since closed up shop. Now, guys, we've got it so much easier when we want to advertise our tax sale properties when we go to sell them, or really any real estate in general. As the internet became more and more popular, what happened is marketers started utilizing it to market stuff, right? Over time, it went from a platform that only specialized internet marketers were able to utilize to market stuff to a place where normal people like you and I can advertise and sell our properties fairly easily. And the results can be astounding and far-reaching. Instead of advertising to the person that happens to eat at that restaurant, then happens to see the magazine stand, and then happens to pick up that magazine, we can actually advertise directly to the people that we want to get in front of. Now, realtors, of course, the conventional real estate process absolutely has its place for tax sale investors. And we can talk about that in a completely separate podcast episode. But today, I want to talk about selling our own properties on our own. Because through the internet, it's easier now than it ever has been in the past. We can do so by being creative, by utilizing the resources that are available for us, and by putting forth some effort. That's really all it takes. So let's discuss a few of the potential ways that we're able to sell our properties. Now, obviously, other ways exist. There's 1,000 different ways you can sell real estate, but I wanted to illustrate 3 of these ways to take advantage of the internet and kind of to get your creativity flowing when it comes to thinking about selling your properties. The first way we'll discuss is simply by advertising your property on all the different national real estate related websites that are so popular that everybody uses. And there are a lot of them. So obviously you can't exactly classify this as like an easy type task. Of course, one of the biggest advantages of using a realtor is their access to MLS and something called Internet Data Exchange, or IDX, which syndicates or automatically will post those listings to thousands of different websites, including a handful of the most popular websites. Fortunately, for you and I, we are allowed on many of these sites to post them as for sale by owner properties. They're also called FSBO if you're in the business. So you can post a FSBO property on many of these sites. Now, of course, you have to go in there and you have to do it manually. So it's going to take some time and it's going to take some effort. One of the many sites that you can post your property on is the ever so popular Zillow. Everybody uses Zillow. As a FSBO, you can go and advertise on Zillow. So Zillow, in addition to a few of the other nationally known type sites, can really provide a lot of exposure to your property to thousands of potential buyers. It's a great way to get your piece of property in front of targeted audiences. Another option are the smaller, less known local websites. It could be a site like Jonesville for Sale or JacksonvilleRealEstate.com or some sort of local classified ads, as simplistic as that might sound. They'll allow you to get your property directly in front of a local audience that has navigated to the real estate section of that site. So obviously they're interested in real estate in that area. Now, with both the nationally known and the local sites, understand that to get the most exposure, you'll likely have to invest in some sort of upgraded package to make your listing stand out. And obviously, this is a decision that you'll have to make at that time based on how valuable you feel that upgraded service might be for you. Okay, another option that's slightly different that I've shot videos about before are the auction websites. Most notable are going to be YouTube and Bid4Assets. If you're not familiar with these auction websites, go ahead and browse on over to those sites and check out the real estate category. I've sold countless properties through both of these sites. It's a fairly similar idea where you are leveraging the traffic into bidders and ultimately buyers of your property. Now, if you're concerned about the sales prices, of course, you can always set reserve prices. But what I've found is that the no reserve auctions will perform the best. And some sellers can even charge document prep fees or recording fees or processing fees, whatever you want to call it, to help offset the auction cost. Just understand that the properties that are going to be sold on these sites are not going to be the $100,000 homes or the mansions, right? It's not going to be the expensive real estate. It's going to be the stuff at the very, very low end of the spectrum. It's going to be likely the $1,000 lot or the $500 lot or the $2,000 lot, the cheaper properties. But using auction websites can be a great way to sell properties in an as-is format without requiring cured titles, since it can often be cost prohibitive for these low value properties. Now, obviously, there is so much more to learn about auctioning off real estate online and how everything is handled and the entire process, but that's kind of just a brief overview. Another option really utilizes the resources developed from the two previous options and kind of combines them, and that's to create a buyer's list. This can be performed a number of different ways, but there are certain strategies to structure it correctly so it's as profitable as possible from the very start. Now, that's beyond the scope of this podcast episode, but essentially what you're doing is creating a list of former and potential buyers for your properties. And it can be segmented in many different ways based on the geographical area, the type of property, and all sorts of other different variables. But once you buy a property, or my favorite way, it actually starts before you buy a property, you'll contact your buyers and you'll offer that property to them for sale. With a quality list, you can easily sell your properties within minutes of buying them. Now, the margins might be a little bit smaller, but you're shaving off weeks or even months off your turnaround time, and your ROI is going to be as close to as immediate as you'll ever get. I always recommend this strategy to anyone who's planning on doing more than just a couple of different deals. And I also recommend that you start this buyer's database, this buyer's list, as early as possible in your career. The very first property, the moment you start advertising it, is the moment you should start building your buyer's database. So there's a few methods to market and sell your tax sale investments using so-called new age marketing styles that didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago when I started. Advertise them on a variety of different websites, auction the properties off, and then you can sell them to a member of your buyer's list. If you'd like more information on investing in tax defaulted real estate, including many more marketing and selling techniques that we've developed over the last 16 plus years, head on over to TaxSaleAcademy.com. Again, that's TaxSaleAcademy.com. And as always, guys, if you found this episode helpful, it'll mean the world to us if you go ahead and take a second to leave positive feedback and maybe suggest this to a friend. Take care, guys, and make it a successful day. See ya.